recording. So we're recording. Can someone say something, please?
Hey there.
Something, please.
Something, please.
Something, please. Fantastic. Thank you. I'm getting the audio levels because we have had a history recently of audio not working. So we're now recording. So this is the PyScript FUN meeting on Thursday, the 13th of February, which is just a little bit less unlucky than Friday, the 14th of February, which is, of course, Valentine's Day. So this is PyScript FUN. So what does that mean? This is where we have that water cooler moment where you're sort of stood around a water cooler and a colleague or a friend comes up and goes, hey, do you want to see something cool? And they kind of just, you wander over and they kind of just show you their cool thing and you ask them questions and you learn something. And it's also a way of celebrating the things that folks have been doing in the community. Now, I know of at least two things that people want to present. So I know that Andrea's sense of fun is interesting because he wants to show us something about file systems, which is always everybody's idea of fun. And I know Dan wants to show us stuff about Pokemon. So who would like to go first? Unless, of course, there's anybody else. I mean, Fabio and Mr. Ghost. I don't have anything to show, but if you have something fun to show, please raise your hand now or tell me. Otherwise, I'll let Andrea and Dan fight it out as to who goes first.
Andrea, you want to go?
I can go.
Okay, Andrea, the floor is yours, matey.
All right. I'm gonna ask to share my screen first. And what have I been up to? Well, there was a discussion in Discord. It was all about being able to mount a persistent file system in your PyScript application or in general any PyScript thing that you might believe a persistent system will work and will be useful for. That includes basically you can it's project unrelated, so whenever you want you can just mount your folder into your PyScript operating system or file system thing, so that you have a way to reach your files from your local host, meaning your actual computer or your actual folder, and you can read, write, and do whatever you want out of that folder. And so in this case, the API I'm proposing is just a new FS PyScript module. So in this case, this is a sketchy example again, but is actually PyScript.fs. And in PyScript.fs, we have right now, out of my merge request and proposal, two methods. One method is mount, and one method is sync. The mount means that you mount any folder you have in your system that you decide to allow PyScript to look at will be available out of this path. In this case, I'm using a / persistent path, but it can be literally any name. It can be any name, anything you want. We actually, the current logic allows you to mount different file system. So anytime you want to mount more than a persistent file system, you can have persistent 1, persistent 2, persistent 3, and all persistent things you like. Right now, I'm just mounting my default persistent thing, and there is one caveat around this API, is that whenever you open a persistent file and you're writing on it, or you're changing your persistent file system, you need to remember to sync at some point the persistent thing. So if your logic is writing, to that file, to that folder, remember to use await fs sync and provide the right for that folder so that everything will work out of the box. This API is not my own invention. This API is provided by Pyodide, and right now Pyodide only. So that's the caveat around this thing. But I would like to show you how it works. Um, and also, I would like to remind you that there are security concerns about browsers and, let's say, not intended websites to crawl or see what you have in your file system. So this API is still bound to your domain. This API is still secure. It's secure as long as you allow that domain, that project, that app to look into your folders. And so here we go. Let me check if I have. Whoa, where is my browser? Okay, so right now, because of these web security issues, you need a user to actually explicitly interact or on your UI to say yes, I want to allow uh, PyScript to access a local folder. So I show you how it works. Basically, in here, the moment I ask to await fs mount persistent, we provide out of the box, or at least that's my idea. It doesn't have to be like this, but this is the best I could come up with. We provide a model that asks you to explicitly authorize that folder crawling. When it comes to folder crawling, in this case, I just select a folder. So this directory picture, directory picker will just pick a directory. It won't show what's inside because it doesn't matter. It's just the directory you want to expose to your file system. And so in this case, I'm selecting this downloads slash test folder. I select a folder. The browser is gonna. I don't know if you're seeing this because
Yeah,
this
we
is
are.
browser now. Okay, is asking me to. Would you allow the thing to edit your files? I'm saying yes, and you can see in this case I have a main a.txt b.txt. And what are we seeing here is exactly A, which is nothing. It has nothing in it. B, this was me testing stuff. But look at that. What is this random txt file? It's a random file that includes some random value. And what happened there? Basically, the moment I await this persistent folder, the browser asks user to mount a dash persistent thing on user's behalf, and and that mount the folder in my local system to this dash persistent thing. I'm printing out things just for demo sake, but at the same time, I'm capable of opening inside that path a random txt. It's a writable in this case. It could be a writable binary. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's just for demo sake. I'm just using a
Andrea,
writable. So
Andrea,
yes,
there's you don't need the f.close on line 19 because you're using a context handler with the with statement on 17. And so when you use that with open the thing, once you get if you delete that line now, once you get to line 19, f is closed automatically for you because the context handler is doing that for you.
That's lovely.
That's why Python's
Today,
awesome.
it's a lovely. Today, I've learned something
Yep,
else.
yep. That's today's little tidbit of fun
You
Python.
know, I've been paranoid about should I close this thing, but yes, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'm writing a string representation of a random number out of a random module, and that's it. That you saw this, right? The random is all I can get, and one thing important because the well, it's not necessarily because the Pyodide API imposes this, but because it's needed. So we need to when we so you can read all you want out of a persistent file system, but when you make change at some point, especially after any change you make, if you want to be persistent, really, you need to be sure that you await file system sync. So our API right now, or the one I propose, is to mount a folder and you can sync that folder because in this case, the file system is it requires asynchronous
yeah.
operations to be fully persistent at the local file system level.
Andrea,
And so
Andrea. So
yes,
Fabio put his hand up, and then immediately afterwards, I put my hand up as well. So you've got a queue of two. I don't know when you want to answer questions, but I'm just letting you know because I know you can't see us.
okay. This was the most the easiest demo I could provide, but we have also the explicit thing that I would like to discuss at some point. Right now, because the API is just mount and sync, I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, Fabio.
Yeah, I don't think it's really a question. It's mostly like opening a kind of quick chat and stuff. Feels like, and I think you may have mentioned something like this earlier, Nicholas. Like that whole mount and then sync feels a really nice natural context manager type of use case,
Mm,
like as more Pythonic API. This is works great as well as to make it an explicit, um, you know, series of calls, but feels really like what a context manager type of approach would give you.
yeah. Yeah. So they synchronous one. I have a question as well. I was at
Asynchronous one, yes,
yeah
yes,
yeah yeah
yes.
yeah 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 exactly. I was kind of expecting when you awaited fs dot mount the result of that to be an object representing the persistent directory, and then when you sunk it, whatever the past participle of synchronizing is, when you sunk it later on, you would then call sync on that object that was returned from the original await. But what you're doing is fs.sync and then the name of the directory. So I don't know, but I think the fact that Fabio, you talked about context handlers, and I'm expecting maybe some representation of that directory to sync. Tells us that, and I can see Andrea already has ideas. I can see the neurons firing because the flashing is coming out of his ear holes here. The, the, there are lots. In it works. Now we've got to work out how to make it work properly in the kind of Pythonic way, if you see what I mean. And the last thing I just wanted to ask, because I know I need to get this in before the discussion kind of goes way off a kilter. MicroPython. I'm just going to say MicroPython, and then I know Andrea is going to get to it. So, Andrea, the floor is yours. Sorry.
Okay. Um, the first implementation of this was exactly what you mentioned, Nicholas. It was returning whatever the Pyodide API is returning.
Mm.
So you have an instance of an object, and sorry, a reference of that virtual local file system thing, and you have to write dot syncfs. You have to await that, and you have to create a reference of that. At the same time, when I was using that, I thought, first of all, this is not an API to just mount randomly numbers. It's just you want to map exactly what you want to map. So the name matters more than the feature.
Mm.
So the fact you remember that you're gonna map slash persistent, or you're gonna map slash dot secrets, or you're gonna map slash this or that, is more important than having a reference around that can get lost. You can forget to sync, and you cannot maybe pass around, and so you just sync that path that you know you created, because if you sync a path that you didn't create, it's gonna throw an error.
Yeah. So,
So
so
this
this
is
is an interesting thing that I think what Fabio was talking about by using a context handler. When you go out of the context with fs.mount this thing as foo, and then you or you just do that. What happens is that when you pull out of that, you can call that sync automatically. So you don't have to even worry about it. Concentrate. You could, just like you can with you can close a file manually, but you don't need to. You don't have to worry about it because Python will do the garbage. Take the garbage out for you automatically. Andrea, sorry. Yeah.
so there's not automatically here. There's no automatically. Forget about it. So in PyDad explicit documentation, they say you need to remember to do that.
Okay,
So
but
there's
what?
no.
Okay, so what I'm saying,
Because
Andrea.
when you wait.
Yeah, yeah,
You mount, you return whatever you want.
yeah.
Any other piece of the application can just read from that file system, write or read, and you don't know when that happens. So there's no automatically in there. With open file, read or write is not something you can hook into. I mean, you might. It means we have to replace all native methods to realize, oh, this with open thing is hooking into a known persistent file system, and is doing something which is not just read or read binary, is actually write or write binary, and so we have to automatically do that. But that's not Pythonic anyway, because anymore, because you just with open with open file, read or write, whatever, you do your thing. So the Pythonic thing is that to expect that file system to work the way it should work, and then you do all your job, and if you are aware that you're dealing with a persistent file system, you just await fs sync that file system root, and you're good to go. Any other, again, this is the second round, the moment I realized just returning the handler is not probably the best way to go, because the handler has to be referenced somewhere else, has to be reachable, and at the same time, you if you think about different modules and different projects, and you have projects or a foreign Python, pure Python things working on the same logic, having that handler all over the place is necessarily going to be better in terms of developer experience, because you need to await sync that handler sync fs. And also, when I thought about our fs namespace, I think sync fs well, it works if you return something, but in the fs.syncfs it felt really bad.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
this is 100% exploring. field.
Oh, totally. We get this.
It's just what I've done right now. It works very well, and it feels supernatural to say I mounted this thing. I know the name of the mounted path, and at any time in any application, I can decide to wait to sync that mounted path before doing something else to that path instead of relying that some handler was dangling around, and so I'm sure that that handler got synced before, or I have to sync that handler. So it's a matter of references, really, where at the same point, I try to explore the implicit garbage collector thing, whatever it is, to make the handler sync itself. But that's not what Pyodide provides right now. And so
So,
we need
Andrea,
to use it. Yes.
Fabio's had his hand up for 5 minutes, and I don't want the conversation to move so that he loses context for his question. So,
He froze his picture.
We need a code, a visual code to say like I saw your hand up. I acknowledge it mostly because that's the main thing. You know, we all can be distracted in the call, and then it becomes, oh, I had my hand raised, blah blah blah. It's just
That's what
I don't want to.
AI
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You're saying?
No, nothing.
Okay. I don't want to take even more time on this call. I think this should be a post, etc. But again, this really feels the exact fit of the why we created a context manager, right? Like I need to open something, that being a file handler, a database transaction, a hard drive mount, whatever it is. I need to do stuff with that reference in a block of code or many calls, pass around reference and stuff, and then I need to clean the house when I'm done, right? So understanding, and it may be my ignorance on how it's being implemented in the Pyodide side, etc. But I would love to explore more because just looking at it really feels like almost like a 100% like one-to-one use case why we introduced context managers in Python. Yeah, Nicholas.
I agree with everything that you said, Fabio. My kind of spidey sense about what's Pythonic is kind of like, you know, going off in the background. And the implementation details that you're talking about, Andrea, could be wrapped up into us creating our own context handler to cope with those or not, and we can explore those. It feels to me like what I want to do is try and write some code without an API existing and saying, well, in an ideal world, these are the use cases that I have, and for each use case, this is how I want to express myself in code, and then compare and contrast that with perhaps the five of us or whoever else is interested in this, so that we get to see what are those sort of thought patterns that we're starting to see emerging in the way people are expressing themselves in their code. I mean, we've seen that with Fabio and I. We're kind of like screaming, it's a context manager here. So you know, then we can start to think, okay, now we have a direction of how it might look, and then we can bring it. I noticed though, sorry for sounding a bit teacherish here, but you didn't answer my point about MicroPython. I know that you're sitting on top of Pyodide, and that has done a whole bunch of stuff, but it seems to me like this API, if not the implementation, but this API of awaiting an fs.mount of a thing, and then we do whatever we do with the API, that could be made to work with MicroPython, because the async stuff is happening when we await the sync, whatever that might be. But under the hood, we've still got the browser's built-in file system that, I mean, it is Chromium only at the moment, but that's 99% of all browsers in the universe anyway. But apart from diehards like me, and I'm delighted to say Dan as well. So yes, Firefox brother there. But I don't know. What about MicroPython is what I want to ask Andrea.
So the thing is, Scriptem file system API allows different kind of file system access. One is memory, one is IndexedDB, one is cache, which I don't think it works anymore, and one is workers, which I have no idea what it does, but none of them grants access to your local file system. So Mscripten API right now is incapable of doing what Pyodide does. That's the limitation we have. So we could ask we could have a MicroPython equivalent, but it will not be capable of read. So there are two limitations. First of all, if we manage to have, because there is a polyfill for this, the polyfill is incapable of being stored in IndexedDB. So the moment that happens, it means if we use a polyfill, every single time you load that page, it is gonna ask you the same exact thing. Would you like to share this folder? And the thing I probably didn't have enough time to show you is that my implementation never asks you again.
Yeah.
Once you provide that thing,
That's
it never asks you again
Yeah.
that thing. Also, it works with or without shared array buffer. It doesn't care about share about array buffer. It works entirely and solely out of IndexedDB capability to store your your preference around sharing that folder on that domain for that path or not. And the merge request is addressing that. So you decide, because that's why I think the path name is more important than anything else, because the path name is the key for this thing to work. So not a reference returned by the path name, but the path name itself is the key to either mount or sync that thing at some point. And you can also write await fs sync that very same path dozen times. The first time that it really needs to be synced, it will take a few milliseconds. All other times it will take zero milliseconds. So that's the reason the current API is shaped the way it is. But at the same time, this is entirely Pyodide effort to integrate a file system directory handler API or reference um, internally, because any file handler or directory handler API in on the web is asynchronous by design. And what Pyodide is doing is to map all operations done through that granted file or directory API to map all the operation through the internal um, virtual file system transparently. So you can write and read synchronously, and you wouldn't notice a difference from a regular file that we fetch from files, our own config files thing. So imagine we push all our square brackets files into the virtual file system. All operations done in those files, read and write, are exactly the same that you can do once you fs.mount your local folder. And that means that behind the scene, Pyodide is mapping all those operations into virtual file system that eventually, when you do fs.sync that folder, will actually be persistent for the next time you refresh your browser. And that I'm not sure I'm answering any question. I'm just explaining how it works behind the scene. But basically, MicroPython doesn't have that functionality. MicroPython could use, because Mscripten is providing different file system. It could use, let's say, IndexedDB. So we could have a persistent file system in MicroPython. What it wouldn't be able to do is to load files from your local host, so from your machine. It will be just something that you need to upload and fetch and push in there.
But
Um,
hang on. But Andrea, I thought, as I understand it, the browser, Chromium browsers, have built in an experimental API that allows access to the user's local file system. And if
that's what we're
yeah,
using here,
exactly.
but
Okay, and so because we have access to global this and MicroPython has access to global this, okay,
no,
why can't we
no.
use that API?
You have to map that directory, that asynchronous directory, local directory handler.
Yeah.
You have to map that
Yes.
into behind the scene Python file system operations.
Right.
So
So you're saying that
asynchronous,
the
when
asynchronous.
you
Yeah. I'm getting this. So what I'm saying though is, uh, you and I and anybody else who's technically minded might want to sort of join this call because we could be here for 3 or 4 hours talking about this sort of stuff
no,
with a
it's,
whiteboard. But the point is that we could when you have the sync operation. So
no, you don't. You don't. You never have the sync operation.
But
That's
no
the
no no
magic.
hang on. Yeah, exactly. I'm talking. Hang on. Let me finish because I need to line up my ducks. Okay,
Yes.
so just let me
Go for it.
put one duck, then the next duck, and the next duck. Okay, so the first thing is that we have this browser-based API that allows us access to the underlying user's file system, right? That is accessible no matter where you are, as long as you're in Chromium. Okay. Second thing is what we're doing is we are mapping that local file system to the browser's virtual file system through that mount point. Okay.
No, in Pyodide, the mount native FS does much more than that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And
Uh,
that's the
I
issue
just want to
we're
say that
making.
I'm being the naive, stupid one here deliberately because, well, I can't help it because I'm both naive and stupid. But also, I'm trying to just probe this problem space. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is that MicroPython could be reading or writing files. Okay. So when you mount the file system, you already got, as you demonstrated, there's a.txt and b.txt there, and when you actually start to open it, you're getting the bytes from those. Okay, but
That's an OS dot list there, that mounting point.
yeah,
It's not me doing anything. So that's
okay. I do you know what, Andrea? I'm just anxious of time because we should have a call about this at another time.
Whenever you want.
Yeah.
Whenever you want.
To
But it's not.
explore this. Yeah.
It does not. So the mount native FS API in Pyodide is nothing we can provide out of the box in MicroPython. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So we can discuss this as much as you like. We can ask Damien too,
Yeah.
but to join the conversation. But it would be a waste of time because the mount native FS is accepting a handler from the JS world that is fully asynchronous.
Yes.
And is mapping that thing inside Pyodide logic so that if you do os.list there, that mounting point, you have your array. You don't have to do anything. And that doesn't work out of the box in MicroPython. That's the reason it's not working in MicroPython right now. And the reason we should absolutely discuss this with Damien too. And that's the thing that I would love to have, but is not that because we have a browser API we can do the same, because it doesn't work internally in MicroPython when you do os.list there, that mounting point. It has to be resolved synchronously in MicroPython side.
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's not the case right now. It's not the case right now.
Yeah.
So we need to understand what Pyodide did. They did an amazing work, but the amazing work is behind context switching in WebAssembly, because they can take asynchronous things into synchronous things, so that when you do os.list there path, you have all the files. So there's more work, more
Yeah.
investigation to do around it. And I'm happy to discuss this with whoever you want. But right now, I'm not thinking this is productive. I wanted to show
Me too.
this
We need to
a
discuss this.
demo,
Yeah.
and my demo had 15% of what I wanted to showcase, but it doesn't matter. We are running out of time, so it's fine.
Yeah. So Andrea, as always, Web Yoda strikes again. You've raised the X-wing out of the swamp, and shown us what can be done with that. I look forward to exploring this further. Like I said, I'm the naive idiot here asking the dumb questions. Sometimes that's useful, but also it can be frustrating. So I just want
Questions
to
are
add
all
a,
the same.
yeah.
The same questions I had during
Yeah.
the landing the
Yeah,
request.
but the important thing is that
Those
asking them
questions
here,
were the same.
asking them here means other people are also thinking the same thing and they can hear your answers as well. But from file systems to Pokemon, from the sublime to the ridiculous, or the other way around, I don't know which way. Dan, you did something wonderful last week, didn't you? Do you want to tell us what that was?
Yeah, it sounds like fun. And also, Andrea, having like a proof of concept of being able to mount file systems with PyScript is just awesome. So yeah, I'm feel ridiculous sharing this now, but that's okay. Let me try to share my screen here.
That's a whole big adventure in Discord if you've never done it before.
Oh yeah, it is.
There's a round circular button that looks like a monitor with a right hand arrow. That's the one you need. Yeah. Okay, I can see Discord.
That's weird. Let me try again.
Okay.
Okay. I think I'm sharing now. Sorry, that took me a while.
No, don't worry. That's your browser. That's your browser. And I'm getting a lot
Yeah,
of
so
echo back.
Okay, so I built an app, and maybe I could show it off first of what it does. So this app called Who's That Pokemon? So it's asking for access to a camera, and I'm gonna allow access. And like all live demos, we'll see if this works.
Woo!
But I have a camera here with a Pokemon with Froakie on it. And I'm gonna try to take a picture here. And it found its Froakie, and it used OpenCV to, I guess, process the card itself and the card that it processed here. So it finds the card in an image using the contours in OpenCV and then processes the image. And then it takes a hash of a JSON file database that I have of card images from this Stellar Crown set of Pokemon, and then it looks up what the Pokemon card is in that database and tells us it's worth a monster $6 or 3 cent euros. It tells you information about the card. And then I guess turning that off, I guess there's a main file. I guess we're loading these 3 files in here in the PyScript.com toml. There's this JSON file that's been minimized, so it's not great to look at, but it has the information with the hashes in the JSON file, and we use the Pokemon API to get the card information. And then all the user interface is stored, of course, in the index HTML and with the CSS. And then there's a card detector, which is using OpenCV to do the card detection itself. And then the card matcher file is doing the hash of the card versus the hash in the database. I'm using a average and difference hash. And then, the main file is giving us access to the camera and going through the different screens and letting you click the button and stuff. So that's my quick demo of a Pokemon, card finder app.
So I have a quick question,
Yeah.
and also I'll say, uh, really cool demo. Actually, to quote my kids, I would say, "Bro, that's bomb, so fire." But
When I first showed the
really,
initial version to my son, he said it was pretty mid. So a lot of these ideas for like calling it "Who's that Pokemon" and "It's a Froakie" are all for my son. So
nice. But yeah, so I'd love to hear what was the most challenging parts of this. And the other thing is mostly I'd love to see that chunk of JavaScript removed and um feel like and to see the web PyScript.web instead of the using the document query selector and stuff like this. Or if there's a reason you opted this route, to understand why, you know.
I think the reason I use that is I didn't know something cooler in Python was available. So I definitely need to learn more about that. To be honest, the CSS JavaScript stuff wasn't. I didn't find that part hard. Most of the challenges was like, how do I get this card matcher with OpenCV and detector and to work properly? And the other thing that I ran into is I was originally using an image hash library called image hash, and the on this modern MacBook, it didn't take too long, but it would take 20 seconds for the app to load. And on my phone, it'd take like, forever, like over a minute, right? And it was because I was importing that image hash library, which was then importing SciPy and a few other things. So I think that was probably the biggest. It was good that I figured out why it was taking forever to load. But that like initial experience of like, oh, I built this app and like, oh man, I can't use this? My son's gonna get bored waiting for the app to load or something was probably the biggest pain point. And then like being able to know if you're importing a package that it's not some like officially sanctioned performing package, I think would be really nice.
Yeah, awesome. Just to clarify, the reason I'm asking is not because it's really to understand what is good, what is bad, and where we can improve. You know.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
thank you.
And I'm now interested in how I can better use Python APIs for this stuff. So I'll have to look into that more. That sounds like fun. Okay.
Andrea had his hand raised. Maybe.
Hey, Andrea.
Yeah, it was answered already, not relevant. So thanks.
I just have to say, when you were sharing your screen, and I'm not quite sure why, but we had sort of an echo on the call. And I have to say, Fabio, you sounded like the voice of Zeus out of some sort of like 1950s sword and sandals type movie, because there was this echo and this booming voice. So apologies, folks, for the
booming. My voice is it's the world's most awkward voice, and I have to. The pain of hearing me back is really bad. So next
you,
time,
me,
I'll
and
say.
everyone in the universe, matey. Everyone hates it.
When I clicked share your screen, I had also share application audio selected, and maybe that was creating like an echo or something. So I know
Yeah,
not to do that next time.
right now it's fine. Fabio doesn't echo anymore, so
Yeah.
I think it that thing.
I'll be better at sharing my screen next time and turn that off.
Oh man, it's taken us at least 18 months to all get used to using Discord. So Welcome to that journey. Welcome to that journey. That was fantastic. It really was. And what I really like about that is that the most difficult part of this wasn't using PyScript. It was actually trying to do the edge detection, OpenCV, and all of that sort of stuff. And that's how it should be. Also, to speak to Fabio's point about, can we get rid of the JavaScript? Sometimes you can't get rid of the JavaScript, but one of PyScript's superpowers is it can work with JavaScript. So even if you can't get rid of it, it's still there because, PyScript is friendly. PyScript loves JavaScript, and we should all. I'm starting to sound like a hippie from the 1960s. Why can't we all just love each other? But it's that sort of a thing. Yeah, I mean, we want it to work more than anything, rather than make sides and things like that. So,
And vice versa.
and vice versa. Yes, JavaScript loves PyScript.
Python can use all JavaScript libraries it likes
Yeah,
too, and so we have a loving affair.
Yeah. It takes an Italian to tell me that.
It's St. Valentine tomorrow. Come on.
Valentine's Day, yeah. So on that romantic, amorous note, if there's nothing else for us to show, that was an exceptionally fun and stimulating PyScript fun, and thank you for Andrea and Dan for their contributions. And we will no doubt be talking about file systems over the coming weeks. I look forward to it. So I'm going to stop the video now.